Hey everyone, so I finished this chapter on leadership, and many of the points that he covered I talked about in my previous talk, but they focus a lot here on generational differences and how those generational differences impact the workplace. And in his book, John Maxwell says that Gen Xers focus on the moral question, doing the right thing, and the millennials focus on bringing diversity of experiences, diversity of values, and diversity in thought to the table. So they want to be themselves at work. I think most of us want to be ourselves at work. And people come to Canada, they don't realize how much they focus on this. They do a lot of research into it in America and Canada, in how the different age groups focus on different things in making their decisions, reaching their decisions, who they're going to vote for. Even their religion plays a function in how they decide to vote, especially in America. It plays a big part in how people decide to vote and who they decide to vote for. So I don't think we focus on that as much when we're growing up in Zimbabwe or even in England. I didn't find that kind of research coming into play and lectures on it and talks on it, but here I do find that. And he mentions that in this book. He says that millennials are just happy to have people at the table. They want everyone to be seen as a contributor, and inclusion hasn't occurred until that's been empowered to happen. So I think, again, it depends on culture, because I know that for us growing up in Zimbabwe, that was always the goal. If you're educated, if you have been given opportunity, if you have been given gifts and talents, you want to pass them on to the next generation. You want to share them. And that's something that is modeled in the culture in the Indian community. So you don't just do it for yourself. You do it because you want other people to also have that opportunity. And that includes being single and buying your own property. It's not like my mother would like me to have my own property and my own place to live in and to be a landowner, not to be renting and throwing away my money on rent. And in fact, it killed her when I had to sell my place, because I had bought that place for me and her. But because of the discriminatory lending policies in Canada, when they know that most people are on minimum wage, most people don't get good paid jobs, most people don't have the opportunity to advance, and you have to also keep your skills up, you have to keep your memberships up, you have to keep retraining and requalifying as the markets change, they still won't help. So in the Indian community, that's passed down. It's passed down from generation to generation, especially if you've grown up with a single mother. Mother who has lost her partner young. You are always encouraged by your grandparents to stand on your own 2 feet, to get an education, to study, to work hard. And that comes through strongly in the Indian community. You're not encouraged to just stay at home, sponge off others, not contribute, not share your knowledge, not share your gifts and your talents with others. I don't know about other cultures, but that's how it is in my culture. So it's interesting to read these books and to see how they focus on the different generations and what people are looking for. And you see that even in the job postings, they'll have little boxes to tick. So based on your gender, your race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation. And baby boomers, they say, he says in this book, might not see practical value in diversity and inclusion. Their focus would be on compliance, ethics, and equality. So it's interesting to read how they think in this culture and how they look at things, how they look at life. It's interesting to see how they focus on different age groups and how they deal with it. And he says in this book that millennials allow voices to be heard that have a tangible and beneficial impact on business. And their goal is not just to bring people together, but to make sure that there are differences in background, personal experience, style, and perspective. So it's not just about equality, it's about equity for them. So we'll see. I'm learning how they think. There's a lot of it that I've gone through, not just with the John Maxwell training, but with other platforms, with HRPA, where they focus on this. And it also depends on, the generational thing. Like for our great-great-grandparents who went to Africa from India, they went probably in slavery. They were taken over as cooks or, house servants or whatever. And then they broke free from that and started businesses. And from there, we progressed. And people went to university and colleges and educated ourselves. But it's not something that all Indians have access to. It's not something that all the Indian community can do. So where we can, we help each other, including from here. And people from there are helping me as well, not just from Africa, but in England, in Australia, in South Africa, in India. We look out for each other in the Indian community. And so he gives us a perspective in this book on how to analyze what the different generations look at and creating a culture of sharing. That's something that's done naturally in the Indian community because people are not rich, people are not millionaires. So you share what you have and you help each other to come up in life. And it broadens your perspective on diversity when you read books like this and you see how they look at it in the North American context compared to in our Indian communities. And when you look at diversity, you look at how can we be creative in that diversity, because we connect on the things that we're similar on, and we contribute using our differences, and that's how we accomplish things together. Because the things that I'm good at, somebody else in the Indian community might not be as good at. The things that somebody else is good at, I might not be as good at. So that's how we help each other in the Indian community. And there's a strong Indian community in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in England. In England, they benefit from our Indian spices. They benefit from our cooking. And it's become a part of their life. If you go to India, you see all those traditions and spices and all that. They incorporate all of that in England. And even in Canada, there's quite a few Indian restaurants, there's Indian shops, there's a lot of things that are available. But anyway, it's good to read and to see how they think and what they think about, how they write. He shares his perspective on how he had to go and live in Atlanta, and that helped him to see the things he had to overcome, the challenges he had to overcome in his thinking because of where he grew up. And that's the same with us. When we come to these countries, like, we see them as arrogant for telling us, oh, you don't have Canadian experience, so why did you let us into the country in the first place? Because you put us through hell, you made us have our credentials assessed, you made us prove that we had the skills and everything to come here, and then when we came here, you didn't use those, you didn't give us jobs in those fields, you didn't promote us, you didn't give us jobs with benefits, and it doesn't make sense. That's where the disconnect comes in. And that's why a lot of people are leaving Canada, not just Indians going back to India, but many cultures. People are going back to Poland, people are going back to Australia, People are relocating back to Ireland. And the same with me. I'm applying for jobs in Ireland. I'm applying for jobs in Australia. I'm applying for jobs in England, because I want, before my mother dies, I want her to see me owning my own property, having my own car. After all, she sacrificed for me. And many people, many of my friends and family in the Indian community, in the colored community, many of them sacrificed for me the same way I do for them. So this is the book, Leadership, that I was reading on. And none of us is indispensable. I mean, life goes on, especially in companies. None of us are indispensable. Like if you put your hand in water, put your hand into a bowl of water and take it out. See if it leaves a hole in that bowl. It doesn't. So none of us are indispensable. We do what we have to do to put food on the table, to work. We take on different shifts, we take on different jobs, but all of us are striving for that life where we can have something of our own, where we can have our properties, where we can see our parents taken care of, where we can say, okay, I contributed to the Indian community. I did the same when I was in the Indian community in Kwekwe, and that's why when I go back, I get a welcome. In Kwekwe, in Harare, in Bulawayo, the Indian community welcome me. So do the others, but that's my community. I belong to the Indian community in Canada as well as in Zimbabwe. And I know the ideal is the Mandela ideal, to move away from that. But unfortunately we can't, because if we don't fight for our own communities, nobody can help us. And yes, we all come together, we all work together, like we've done that in other places. But at the end of the day, you look at the Germans, you look at the Irish, you look at people from different backgrounds, they work for their own communities. And so, yeah, in a sense, I lost that in England, because I come from a family where there are lots of mixed marriages in terms of religion, in terms of race, in terms of different things. So I left that behind. But here in Canada, I noticed that's what they do. They do it on the One campaign. They do it on different things in the church. They look out for their own communities. And when Ndidi came in and she brought this thing about, oh yeah, there's an Indian community, I was like, oh, okay, this is new. When Bono was with us, it was always about we. It wasn't about emphasizing Indian community and white community and all of this. It was about the ever-expanding we and holding that love at the center of it. So now I also do it, because we're all trying to survive. We're all trying to get jobs. We're all trying to get something of our own. And for me, as part of the Indian community, I also want to be able to have my mother smiling again and not have to hear that you're joking. I'm like, no, I'm not joking. This is how the companies treat me. So it's very sad, actually, because we lost my dad when I was small. I was only 5 years old, and I did everything right to land up with sour grapes, all the low-hanging rotten fruit. It's quite sad, actually. But anyway, we put our faith in God, and we keep our traditions, we keep our own ways of doing things. And they read books like this here. So for us, we grew up in a different way. And some of it came out of necessity. Because if you're rich, if you have your own property, your own car, you have everything, why would you want to share with others? You probably think that's a bum. She's just sitting at home and she can't even get a job. But it's actually not the case. I'm not the only one going through it. So I would just encourage others in the Indian community not to give up. And there are many of my friends who have gone from Zimbabwe. They're working in England. They're working in Ireland. So I'm also trying to do that. In fact, my friend Mita, she's a Hindu. She was a Hindu girl. She also told me, she said, you should try to go to Ireland. I said to her, I do apply for jobs in Ireland. And of course, if I get an opportunity, I'll go. Isn't it? because that's where we get our sense of identity, in being with our own communities. The Dutch are like that. The Afrikaners are like that. So it's different. Like, we still come together. Like, I will still go and I represent Wits University here. So I go to events. I help them with my time, with my talent. But at the end of the day, Zimbabwe is a better country. It's a better country. We don't have that hatred for each other. So we'll see. But yeah, I thought I'd share that because it's interesting how they focus on the different generations and what they do and the research that goes into it. I also thought like that, like the millennials. When I first came to Canada, I wanted to just be myself. But you can't really be yourself when you are in a different culture. You have to adapt and you have to make the most of things. And always remember, you're not indispensable to the companies. They don't care. Your family and your friends, yes, they will be the ones that miss you. But the companies, they don't care. They don't. Unfortunately, that's the reality. It would be nice if they did, and if they helped families, and if they actually accommodated people, and if they actually wanted to change, it would be different. But they don't. So we have to encourage our own Indian communities and keep strong in them.